Hello, very good evening. My name is Dr. Shan. Today, basically, we will be talking about some tasks that we will be doing on PHP sessions. Now, we talked about sessions in last class. Sessions are a very cool way of storing data globally throughout your web page, which basically is maintained, allowing us to remember which user basically is performing various different tasks. In order to do that, let's do a small exercise. In today's class, we will basically be doing a small task that will allow us to create 6 pages, and within those 6 pages, it will try to track the user's activity by counting how many times the same user has visited various different pages. My name is Dr. Shan. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel. Let's begin. Now, in this task, basically, we need to make 6 web pages. Every web page needs to contain the links of all other web pages. So that's one thing essential. And on the 6th page, the results of all visited pages should be shown. How many times the user has visited each page. So we will require 6 different pages to create. Every page must have links to all other pages. Then on the 6th page, basically, we need to tell the user how many times you have visited page 1, how many times you have visited page 2, how many times you have visited page 3. So it keeps record of every page the user has visited. So every time he switches between pages, its record is supposed to be maintained. And finally, it's supposed to be displayed on page number 6. This again we will do using sessions. Okay, so let's start. So I have this web page already created for me. Remember, we created in one of the CSS lectures few weeks ago, in which we created a simple responsive website with active green link. Okay, so whichever page is active would be highlighted green. So let me, I just renamed it to user counter sessions, and we have this single page available, a simple layout. Okay, we will be using this simple web page for our purpose. So what I do, let me close it, I come into the code, and let me copy these 2 files. This is index and this is a external CSS for it. Simple file, Control C. Let's jump into our XAMPP folder, come inside htdocs, and as you know, we've been creating folders in here. So within htdocs, let me create another folder called hit counter. Okay, COUNTR, hit counter. So every time user accesses a page, it hits a page, we count how many times it has used it. Control V. So we have the index page available. Now this is again an HTML page. So what we do is we right click and let me open it inside my Sublime editor. So if I come here, file, open file, and there we go. So within HT documents, we come into hit documents and index file, open. Okay, let me close this file. So we have a simple HTML page available. It's a very simple HTML page that contains head, meta tag, and the link to our CSS style sheet. We have a body div tag that uses for our h1, and then another div tag for the content, and then we have underline links, and then a div tag for the body. Okay, so what we need to do is now we need to convert this into a PHP and add some dynamic content to it. So let's begin. Now first thing is I will just save this page as index.php. Okay, so I will just give here .php and save it. Okay, because this is my first page, I need to ensure that I have all 6 pages or 6 links available for me. In this case, we come here and I will copy, for example, I think this is my class active. So let's just take the class active from news page and put it in our home page for now. Did I do anything? Control X and come back here, Control V. Okay, so what this class active means, whichever link is active will have that green highlight to indicate which page you have accessed. Then let me come here and copy this page called news 1 2 3 4 5, and I think that should do the trick, right? So basically we have a home page, and then we have called page, or let's just access news, and then we can say for example blah 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 blah. I don't know, blogs, I guess, and then what we can write here is TWV tweets, and then what we can write is, for examples, webinars, and then finally that creates like 1 2 3 4 5, and then results. Okay, Okay, so we created this 5 pages. This is about page, which is on this right side, so we just leave it at there. We save this page, so technically we have 6 pages available. Now one thing we have to ensure that whenever you create multiple links, make sure every page has a correct link to it. So and then we will duplicate the same page 6 times. Okay, so this is my first page, so I need to ensure that my second page is blog.php, news.php. Okay, blogs, I think blogs.php. so we have not created these pages right now, but I still would just name them. So because I know I will be naming them same, so I put the links here. What this will do is webinars and then finally results.php. okay, so now we have 6 various different pages created for us. Now I have renamed them and given them name right here in the first page. Then I will save this same page 6 times. What this allow me to do, it will ensure that all links are working on every single page and we have same layout throughout all 6 pages. The CSS basically is applied on every single page. Okay, so a very simple thing. Again, on home we have index.html. Let me just name it as PHP. Okay, so this is now index.php. So home is also PHP, news, blogs, all the links have been created. Now simply this is user count sessions. This is my major home page. So I will just come here and this is the test page for times the user has visited, blah 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 things. So let this be my first page. Then I will go into file, save as. The second page is supposed to be news.blog. So I will write news.php. This page is again saved as news.php, same page, save as, and I will save it as, for example, blogs.php, file, save as. Now I will twe tweets.php. So I'm saving same page 6 times with different file names. What this will do, it will create 6 pages with the same styles and hopefully everything should work fine. Okay, and then finally let's just go and create save as and results.php. okay, so now if I go inside the folder, we have 6 different pages available. This index.html page is no longer needed, so I will just remove it, because sometimes it might, if you just write the folder name, it might just confuse which page I'm loading, index or PHP. So let's just remove the HTML file and now we have a PHP index and then 6 other pages. Okay, let's just come inside here and then file, open file, and let's open the remaining files. So I will open all other files excluding the CSS. Currently I don't need more work with that. Okay, so here's my index page. Let me just put it in the first and the result goes at the bottom. Okay, so we have our 6 pages available. So on home page, on the news page, user counter, and then with sessions, let me just put it with news page. Okay, so we know which page we are working with. Tweets page, let's just come here, tweets page. Okay, so this is tweets page. Webinar page, let's just rename the heading as webinars page. Blogs page, let's just come back here very quickly and name it blogs page. Finally results of hit counter. Okay, so we now have 6 pages available. Let's just test them. In order to test these pages, first thing is we need to go and start our what we call control panel. Okay, so my control panel is visible. Now let's just start Apache server. So now Apache server is started. Let's just come into our web page and write localhost, LOCAL, localhost, press enter. We have the dashboard available. Now this dashboard basically indicates that my server is working perfect. Now I will just remove the word dashboard. I will write hit counter, counter, press enter, and my hit counter web page is visible. Okay, so we have home page available, user counter. We go into news page is visible. Again, remember this green is not changing. I will show you how we do that. It's webinar and basically all. Oops, what's happened? If I go back, results is not working. Why not? Let's just come back here. This was not supposed to happen. Okay, misspelled, results, results.php. Yes, results. Okay, so we renamed this result, or we named this incorrectly in basically our links. That means because we copy pasted, so every page will have the same mistake. So the links would not be working on any single page. So results, results. So let's just correct this very quickly. This is one mistake that sometimes we do. If we misspelled one word, basically that page will not be visible throughout your website. So let's just make sure your website is working. So once we save it, that's why we like to do testing and checking again and again. Hit a refresh. Now if I go news, blogs, and the results, it's working. Webinar results, it's working. Tweets results, it's working. So basically every page is accessible from within every single other page. Okay, perfect. Now the major task is to, as we are browsing through each page, we need to record that how many times we are accessing each page. Then obviously this green bar is not changing. This is something to do with CSS. Let's just solve these both problems. So first thing is we go into index.phtml. Remember, we use something called active class, okay, with home. That's why when we access the home page, we have a green color bar, okay, here. Now if we come back into our code, we go into news page. So in the news page, basically we just need to control X and paste this. So as the user is accessing the news page, this becomes the active link. Then we come into tweets page. From tweets page, the home, control X, remove this and put this under tweets. So this is a CSS class which basically will ensure, if I open the CSS now for explaining, okay, remember, so it's called active. So basically this means that this link is active. So within CSS we should have something called a active, which would change the background color of that particular active link, meaning under our CSS we have specified that whichever link is active, just change its background color. So in this case, webinar, I will go into control X, the home page, again removed because this is not home page, this is my webinar page. So I'll put that class only under this page and remove it under every other page. If we put on every page, all page will appear green, all page would appear to be active. So that would just make no sense. Okay, and then just remove this from here. Control S, and finally on results, Control V, and let me just remove it from the link. So now if I come back into my code, hit a refresh, see webinar is active. I go into tweets, tweets becomes dark green. I go into news, news becomes, so basically it tells us which page we are or which is the active link we are working in. Okay, so perfect, that's resolved. Now let's come into tracking the record using PHP. Now the first thing is that we go into our home index page. Remember, this is the page which allows us to keep the record. So within this page, when we come on, once the user clicks on this page, let's just come here before the body. Let me write PHP code. Okay. This now basically means that we are starting our PHP, and I put it after the links that we have created. Here we need to manage the sessions. Now sessions we talked about in previous class. Basically session allows us to monitor and manage an entire window in which user is able to access a window or access basically its data. So we use SESSION session underscore, and we have multiple different methods. We use start. Okay, and we talked about that whenever we're working with sessions, do ensure that session is the first thing after you write PHP code or after you go for any other PHP statements, unless you're working with session ID or session path. But for now, we just leave those two to default and we need to work with sessions. So this is what we need to do with every single page. This basically means that we have now started a session. Then we come down and session has been created. Simple as that. Now user activity is being tracked. So what we do now here is we go into $_SESSION session variable. This is a variable because we started a session, now is created by PHP automatically. So this is now accessible. This would probably have some value inside it. So now what we need to do is we need to check whether any value exists in this session or not. So we go into if conditions and we use a method called set bracket start, and we use something called brackets and then bracket close, and then this is I think is set and then if and then block start block close. Okay, now isSet is basically a method that is used to evaluate that whether there is a value, is a set of values inside this function or not. Okay, it's a very useful method. We use it for these global variables like get, post and session to check that whether before even accessing the variable values, that if there is any variable or if there any value inside these variables or not. Okay. So for example, we said that check this variable $_session and check the value inside it. Now which value? Again, remember session is basically like a variable and we need to check the key. Okay, session is like an associative arrays, and associative arrays require a key and element, and we are going to check whether there is any matter or not, any data inside this variable or not. So how we do that? We basically use something called is set. Is there any set? And we check the variable's condition. If this becomes true, if set returns true, means there is a value. If there is no value, we don't need to process it. So what we do is, if set, so in this case, if such is the case, what we do, we go inside $_SC_SSIUN session, and then we use variables. Now, for example, we can say visit becomes my variable, okay, session variable, or visit count. Let's just VISIT, visit count. Now this is my variable name that I have created within my session, or the key name in other words. So we just come here and we use visit count ++ semicolon. Okay, so what we say that we will store some value inside a visit count. Okay, and whatever value is inside the visit count, just increment that visit count. So every time user clicks on a page, this visit count session variable gets increment +1. So you come back, you again hit on this page, this again gets increment. Else what we do is $_, or in fact else $_SE session, and I think this will be visit count is equals to 1 semicolon. So now what we did here, let's just revisit thing, because now this the same thing will be done in every single web page. First we started a session. This is essential in order to work. Once the session has been initiated, now we need to evaluate first that within this session have we created a variable called visit count. Okay, within this session we have created a variable called visit count. This variable will hold the number of times user is basically accessing the variable. So every time we visit a website, basically there's a variable which will increment 1, 1, 1, 1. So every time user comes and accesses a particular page, this increment gets 1. So we need to read this variable. Okay, so what we do is we use if condition with a method called isSet. isSet is basically a method that will evaluate this particular variable data. It will check whether there is a set of values inside this method or not. If this array or associative array has a value, or is it empty. If it is empty, this will return false. Okay, if this was empty, it will return false. No, there is no value inside it. If there is no value inside it, this if will exit, this statement will execute because the condition becomes false. If this is false, this will execute. This means that for the first time when you execute the page, this session visit variable will have no value. Because this will have no value, it would be empty, and because this will be empty, the isSet will return false. Because it will return false, it will come here else, and we will set this variable is equals to 1. This now means because we have executed for the first time in this session, this will be equals to 1. Okay. The next time you access this page, it will now be true that yes, there is a value inside this isSet counter. Previously it was blank. Now the second time there is a value. So what it will do? It will increment that value. Simple. The third time you visit, again it will check, is there value in this visit counter? He said yes, there is a value inside the visit counter. If there is a value inside the visit counter, now what you do is you increment the variable. So a very simple logic, we start a session, we create a variable, and we keep track of plus count. For the first time we need to check that is there any value or not. Because of that we use the isSet method. Now once this is created, Control S, and this will keep a record. As simple as that. So we use this $_session variables. Then for example, we go on to the page 2, for example news. So what we do is we again copy the same code, Control C, we go on to the news page, again the same web page. At the bottom outside the div before the body closes, we paste the same code. Here again we have started the session. So this is the key thing. Whenever you start, whenever you need to maintain a user's activities throughout the multiple pages, we work with sessions. Within sessions, we need to ensure that we in PHP code, the session is the first statement, and this session start is on every single page. Okay, so the session start variable has to be put on every single page. This will ensure it will try to create a new session. It will find, oh, there is already a session that I'm coming from, and it will start to use the same session. So once we start the session, we use the same thing. Remember, once the session has been started, the session variable is like a super global. The value are automatically shared between multiple pages because it's within the same session domain. So we don't need to recreate this variable again and again, or we do not need to pass the variable values. It's automatically there. We just read it. So once it reads this variable information, now it has this thing. Taken. But this, what it will do, it will maintain the session count for all pages. Okay. So let's just first of all do this thing. Let's come into tweets page. Now again the body we paste it. Then come into CSS. Sorry, we don't need CSS. Webinars page. Come at the bottom, we paste it. And then come into the blogs page. At the bottom, we paste it. Then in the results page, we come at the bottom, we paste it. And then at this, probably the last thing, in the results page at the end, we will echo out the result. So echo bracket starts paragraph tag with style style, sorry, paragraph style style, oops, equals to, and then we can write, for example, cor color is equals to I like red, semicolon, font size, font dash, I think it's size SIZD is equals to maybe 40, semicolon. Okay, so we have created a paragraph, and then within this paragraph we can also set it to bold if you want to do that. Now the hit COU counter is space tongue, and then we use this dot dollar underscore c session variable with something called visit count. Okay, semicolon. So what we did at the end of this results page, it will start the session. It will again do the same counting, but this time it will go into the echo, also print the result of your page. So every we can use this on every page as well for that particular matter, but let's just put it in the results section right now. So let's, once we do that, make sure every page is saved. Okay, so let's just save this. All the pages are saved. Again, do remember that. So once you're working with multiple pages with PHP, we need to ensure that every single page is saved before we come here. And now let's just refresh this page. Okay, so once we are on web page 1, let's hope that it has started the counter. We go on web page 2, web page 3, web page 1 again, tweets page, blogs page. So we are visiting multiple pages. Now the front end user, it appears nothing, it's normal. But as soon as you start it and refresh the page, the session variable was created. Within that variable, now basically every time we are accessing a page, it is keeping a count. So if I go into the result page, see this, we have already accessed it 41 times. So if I come into webinar page, tweets page, then come here, we already have accessed it multiple times. So every time we visit this page, basically it's counting our data. We can do one more thing, is that if I come inside the result page, this line here, I copy this and I come back here and paste it in every single page. What this will do is that it will try to give us the data on every single page now. Okay, control S. But the major thing here is happening is that through sessions, basically we are trying to maintain the number of times each page has been recorded or viewed. Okay, control S, we come back here, and again, because we changed all the pages, do ensure that you come back here and make sure that every page is saved. Okay, so now hopefully the results will be displayed on every single page. We come back here on webinar. In fact, we go on hit counter, first delete it, come into the local page. Sometimes what we do is we even close the window. What this will do is it will destroy the session. Currently, we have not destroyed the session manually. So if the page is still open, what it will consider that your session is still being maintained, it will start to count from that particular point. Okay, but now because we close the browsers or close the tab, probably that session was be destroyed. Now if I access the local host again, so we have a local host dashboard. From here we come back and we access the hit counter date web page, delete this, just the hit counter website, enter. Okay, so now it sees it's still maintaining that 19 ratio. So if I come into the news, now it's 20, it's 21, 22. So what's happening that my session is still being maintained because I'm using the same browser. Let's just do one thing. Let's just come into another browser and start opening a new website. Just write local host host / hit counter counter and press enter. Finally, Okay, so now see hit counter is 1. So this is basically what's happening. So what happened here is that once we go into the Chrome browser, the session basically was still active. That's one thing that we need to understand. Sessions is basically like your activity window. Okay, it's like your time has started, but the time has not ended. The session has not expired. So once we even close the browser, somehow the session was still active. Remember, by default, the session remains active for 24 minutes. So even we closed the browser, but I think we should have closed the browser and restarted the browser. Because we closed the tab only, the browser was open, that session was probably still being maintained. So we opened the new tab, we wrote the address again, localhost, hit counter. But what it did was it maintained the session. Okay. So if I come into hit counter again, press enter, see this session is still being maintained, because it remembers that it's the same user from the same PC from the same browser window. So your URL, your port number is being maintained, and the session ID based on that is being maintained. So it identified that I'm the same user, I have the same browser, I have the same window, so probably I'm the same user. And since the session has not been destroyed, the session was continued. So that's sometimes what happens when we continue to visit certain websites. Even we close the browser, we do open it accidentally, and we open it again, we see that our session is active. Okay, but if I open a different browser, now it identified, even the same PC is there, but because it's a different browser now, so it recognized me as a new user. So the session now recognizes me as a new user if from a different browser. So it doesn't matter if it's the same machine, but if it's a different browser, now it's a new user. New user means that this session is created again for that particular user. Now if I go on to the different websites, you see that my session count is being changed. Every time I visit a website, my total number of hit counters is basically being changed. Now remember, the task was to create a web page that has a counter for every single page. It counts every single page, that how many times I have visited each page. So what we have done here is that the same count is for every single page. However, we need to track each individual page, that how many times I visited news, how many times I visited blogs, how many times I visited tweets. So if I come back into my code, what we need to do now is, instead of using one variable for every single page, I would be requiring to use different variables. How we do that? Let's just come back here. I copy this code again. If set session visit, so I'll use this deliberately. Now we come back here and we use another variable. Okay, and this time we use page 1 count. Okay, for example, page 1, or let's just use home count. Okay, home count. Now this is another variable we used for my home page, and it will count my home page. And instead of visits all page, let me just use home count here. Okay, and so let me just put a comment here so we understand that count individual page visits. Okay, this is what we do here is count overall visits to website. Okay, so this counts overall amount of time the user has accessed every single page, so total number of pages accessed. This time we need to check individual page. So here we used a home count, and in this time again, so same code is done, but this time the variable is basically home count. And now I can use again another paragraph tag, the home counter, the home counter is, so this time it's the home counter. Okay, so it will now count how many times I have visited the home page only. So I copy this code again, Control C. Again, it's the same code. What it does is, this time we set a variable or evaluate a variable whether there is any other value inside a session variable called home count or not. Home count again becomes another variable we created now, and we have saved this value inside a session. $_session is the global variable with this key value, home count. If there is any value inside the home count, increment that home count value. For the first time, because we are accessing this page, there will be no value. Because there is no value, this is set will return false, and if will become false. Because if becomes false, else will be executed. So within this else, we come here and we will initialize the home count variable 1. So whenever the user accesses the page for the first time, this else will execute. The next time the user will run, this home count will have a value, and it will just simply increment it. Set is a method default built in that evaluates whether there is any value inside this associative array or not. Okay, so this array variable will be evaluated. If there is value inside it, increment that value. If there is no value inside it, assign it a new value. For every user first time a new variable value will be assigned, and then it will evaluate. In the first case, we used a single variable throughout our all pages, and it evaluated the total count our website has been receiving throughout all pages. However, in this case, we need to evaluate single page, each page count. So we just simply change the variable home count, home count, home count, and here again I need to change something called home count. Okay, so we are here. Then we go into news page. Same thing now we need to do here. So inside the news page, after this statement ends, individual page, but this time I will not use the home page. I will use another variable called news count. Okay, now what this basically means that I am counting how many times the user is accessing the news page rather than counting the entire website access like we did with the visit counter. We are now only concerned with the visit page. So under the news page, we used a new variable that if the user has accessed this news page previously, let's increment that time. If it has been accessed for the first time, initialize this variable with 1. So the next time user logs in, accesses the same page, or sorry, not logs in, but the next time user accesses the same page, only this news count variable will be incremented. Okay, so this will ensure that I will keep a track of news page. Now same code basically is displayed on every single page with every single page's own custom variable. So twwet tweet count, and then I will basically change twwet tweet count, and I come back here. So basically we are creating individual variables for each individual page, okay, to ensure that we count every page, and that variable value is saved in a session variable. So as long as the window is open, okay, I think the tab doesn't destroy the session. So as long as the window is open, your session would be managed till 24 minutes by default. If you are accessing and your web page is active, it will keep on enabling the session. So let's just come here, webinar count, and come here webinar count and webinar count, and I will change all this. Okay, VEB webinar count. Okay, so now again webinar page, again same thing, check individual variable. If there is a value, if there is no value inside it for the first time, a variable value will be initialized. The next time the session is, or page is accessed, it will check is there any value inside this associative array. This will return true. If it returns true, again initialize it with or just increment it with a plus variables. Okay, similarly blogs page, and let's just add the same code inside the blogs count and blog count. Let me just access the blog count and blog count and blog count. Okay, so now it will check the blog page. So we have a blog counter. Okay, finally on the results page, again let's just do the same thing. Okay, and we have set home count, or let me just use the result count and result result count, result count, and finally result count, and this will be result count. Okay, but on the results page, now what we need to do is we need to echo and print all the statements. So we come here, echo 1, echo 2, echo 3, echo 4, echo 5, and echo 6. Okay, so here once we, I think, let me just end this page, or let me just write echo one more time, bracket start, and let's just use br and br couple of 2 times, so there's a space between this, and now we need to print all. So what we did is I used echo statement 6 times. The result counter, or I think instead of result counter, let's just use the home counter page, and for the home counter page I will use home count, and then for the news page and EWS news counter, I will use the news count variable. Okay, so now on the last result page, basically we need the results of all pages. So we will basically be using variables data for all single page. If I come back here, webinar, and then I will result webinar. Okay, and then finally we have blog, and then let me use this blog here. Okay, so now what we did is we use the same echo statements for home on the results page. So it will go and read the home count and print the result. Then it will go and print the news count, similarly tweets count. See, so at this point it will print all the data, and now we have not passed the data, we have just accessed the data. Because the same session is being managed and for every page we have a session created. Okay, this basically means that the variable data is already stored in a global variable. So we don't need to pass this data manually. The only key thing to here understand is that the data is automatically being passed and maintained through our sessions. Okay, so once we access this session variable, this data is already inside my web page, and we can access that data or that information from any page for that matter, from home page, from a news page or another page, and that data is accessible. So we created these 6 variables in each individual page, and I'm using and accessing that data on the result page. Okay, so on the results page, I come here, I print a home count, I print news count, I print dude counts, and I will be printing the results of every single page on this website. So Control S to save it. Okay, I think we just close this because this paragraph is open, so let me close it. We save it, then we come into the browser. Let me just again close the browser, and inside it let me just close these tabs, and let's just close the browser again. So now we close the browser. So what this should have done, it should have destroyed the session that we created previously. Now let me open the Chrome browser again, come inside my new tab and write localhost / hit counter, press enter, and see we get the 1 value. So if you close the tab, your session still remains. In order to ensure that your session is destroyed, we close the browser. By default, the session is destroyed whenever the browser is closed. Okay, so once we close the browser, not the tab, the browser, the session is destroyed. Now as soon as we restarted the browser and access this page, now it assumes that this page has been accessed for the first time. Okay, and that's why the hit counter is 1, and the new session has been created. Now this session recognizes the browser, the user, the tab, and every activity that we will be performing on this particular page. So this now basically means that hit counter is 35 and we have a 1 page. So if I come here, it is now maintaining my user record, and basically each page's visit is being accessed. Okay, so if I come here and access these pages multiple times, blum 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 blum, and I come inside the results section, we got an error. Let's just go back into the code and see why there's an error. I think line number, it says 53. If I come here, 53. Okay, so we missed out on a semicolon. So let's just use a semicolon on the echo page. We go back, hit on the results page, and now we have this data available. So it tells you the total. We have used this, access this page 72 times based from the previous sessions. The result counter is set to 1. I think we have accessed this result page for the first time. The home counter is 8 times, 7 times, and there is an undefined tweet count, some error on 55. I don't know why the error is there. 55. If I come here, $_tweets. I think the variable name is tweet. Okay, see, we rename this error. So if you get these notice or undefined index type errors, just read the variable. It says undefined index tweets count. That basically means that doesn't understand this particular variable on line 55. So if we come back inside the code, we will go into line 55 and we see and try to find this tweets count. So if, in my case, it was supposed to be right, but if I go inside the tweet page, remember it's just tweet, not tweets. So we come here and correct it. So do be aware of your PHP. It will generate certain errors. Sometimes it displays the rest of the code. Sometimes it just stops and displays only the error. Okay, so we correct the errors as we go along. And simple typing mistakes, hopefully. So now what we do is if I hit a refresh, hopefully the tweet count page is also visible. So now tweets 11, and see now it's individually counting how many times I've visited each individual page. So I've come into the blogs, now it's 10 times, it's 12 times, and it's increasing. So if I access the blogs again and again, see the number is basically increasing. Every time I click here, the number is basically increasing. Okay, and then I come into the results, that number is displayed on this particular page. Similarly, results as well. So as soon as I click on the results, this is the global times every user has accessed the page, and individual results counter is also increasing. So a simple way, using your sessions, we basically keep track of our website and we maintain our website. Similarly, if I come inside a new browser and I will access it, and this time again it should have hit localhost, hit COUNTR counter. So home counter is 1. If I access the home page again, it's 2. If I come into news counter, now the hit counter is 14. I'm assuming this is from the previous session as well. If I come inside the hit counter, what has happened here? Why this statement is not there? Individual pages. Okay, I have not printed that statement, right? echo control C, control V. Okay, so this is hit counter. Visit count. Okay, I think that's the true one, right? Yes, visit count, the hit counter. So control S. So if I come inside here again and I close the browser and I access the local host slash hit counter, you see it's already 15. That's because again the session is still being maintained. Okay, so that's why we will be talking about destroying the session. Currently the session has not been destroyed. Okay, so as long as the session is being maintained, it remembers you. The server remembers you, so when you access it, the same session basically continues. That is why we also need to ensure that we destroy the session by the end when we close the window. We will talk about destroying session later on. Okay, hopefully you understand this task. Try to do it yourself. Let me know if there's any confusion or anything you don't understand, and I will try to re-explain. Thank you very much for watching. See you around.